Welcome back to the shop. I just finished building this planter. Kind of similar to some of the planters that I've built in the past. This one I think is a little simpler because there's no decorative molding. For the most part, I have my material milled. So I'm going to start by explaining how to make the detail on the legs. Since I already have the legs squared up and milled to 3/4 or 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, the next step is to square up one side, then I'll set up a stop block and cut all the legs to length. When I'm squaring up one side, after I make the cut, I put the leg on the table with the cut side hanging off the table, and that reminds me that that's the square side, and that'll be the side that goes against the stop block when I cut the legs to length. Now that I have the legs cut to length, the next step is to cut this little detail at the bottom. And the first step is to set the angle of the blade at 45 degrees. Now I'll lower the blade to just about 1/4 inch, and I'll test it with this sample that I made. And that looks good. I've set the fence at 2 inches, and using the miter gauge, I'll make one pass on all 4 sides of each leg. I've moved the fence to the other side of the blade, and I've adjusted the fence so the next cut will be 3/4 inch from the first cut with the 45-degree angle in the opposite direction. Now I'll move the fence back and raise the blade. I'm going to be making this cut, and you want to raise the blade, otherwise you'll cut into the upper portion of the leg, which I did on the first planter. So go ahead and just raise the blade up pretty high. And now I'm going to bring the fence in, so I'm taking off just about 1/4 inch chamfer. I'm going to sneak up on this cut. And I think that looks good, so I'll make the same cut on all 4 legs. I'll use the test piece again to find the height of the blade. And I recommend making a test piece before you make your legs. It'll just get you warmed up, and you can kind of figure out any problems you might have before you actually get into the project. What I want to do now is also sneak up on the cut on the bottom part of the leg and the upper part of the leg. Once I have those two cuts made, then I can just plow out the material in the middle. All right, that looks good. So I'll make the cut on all four legs on all four sides. Now I'll move the fence over a bit and sneak up on this cut. Actually looks good right away. I move the fence in a little, and next I'll just remove the material that's left in the center. That'll take 2 passes because it's just a little bit wider than 1/8 of an inch. I've set up a stop block so the cut will always be in the same place. The saw is set at a 45-degree angle, and I'll cut a 45 on each side at the bottom of the leg. Okay, that's just about it for the legs. There is one more small detail. I've now set the miter saw at a 7-degree angle, readjusted the stop block, and now I'm going to cut that 7-degree angle on all 4 sides at the top of the leg. Okay, that's it for the legs. Now I'm going to move on to the rails, or these cross pieces at the top and at the bottom. That's what the slats will be attached to. I've already milled the material at 3/4 by 1 3/4 inches, and the next step is to cut the parts to length. Again, I'll square up one side of each board, then set up a stop block and cut the parts to length. Now that I have the rails or cross braces cut to length, the next step is to join them to the legs. And originally I had planned to use pocket hole screws just to make the project much more accessible. A lot more woodworkers have pocket hole jigs as opposed to dominoes. But this Jatoba is just so hard and dense, I know that I would end up breaking screws. But if you're going to build this planter and you're planning to use a wood like cedar or even sapele, you can build this using pocket hole joinery, and the cut list and material list are exactly the same. But because I'm using Jatoba, I'm going to join the parts with dominoes. I made this jig to make sure that I attach the braces at the same place on all 4 legs. So this line here represents where the bottom of the brace needs to be. This is where I'll cut for the domino, up towards the top of the leg. Again, that's where the bottom of the brace needs to be. And this is where I'm going to cut the domino. I'm also going to square across. This will help remind me when I'm cutting the domino. And here I'm only going to make a line about 3/4 of an inch long, because it'd be very easy to make the mistake and cut the domino here. You can also put a piece of blue tape here. Anything that reminds you to not make a mistake is time well spent, because it's going to take a lot more time if you need to repair it. So if it'll help you prevent making a mistake, you can put a piece of blue tape here. And again, that's another reminder that you're cutting the domino here on this line and not on that line. I'm using the 8 by 22 by 40 millimeter domino. And for the legs, I have this setting set at 15, this setting set at 36, and I have this in the middle. That gives me a little adjustment room during the glue up. For the rails, I've set the depth at 25 and the height at 25. When I attach the brace to the leg, I'll make sure to line up the mark that's on the brace with the mark that's on the leg, meaning the mark is facing the inside of the leg, and that's going to give me a 1/4 of an inch reveal on the inside. If I make a mistake and attach it like this, I'll end up with a 1/2 inch reveal, and that would be wrong. I've allowed the glue to set up. Now I can take the planter out of the plants and start to attach the slats to the sides. These are my favorite clamps, by the way. These are Dubuque, made in the USA, Dubuque, Iowa. And if you're looking for new clamps or just getting into woodworking and you want to know what clamps to buy, I highly recommend these clamps. Definitely my favorite clamps. I've already milled the slats to width and thickness. Now I've set up a stop block and I'll cut them all to length. To attach the slats, I'll use this jig that I made to mark where I'll need to pre-drill and countersink holes. To make it easier to attach the slats in the correct position, I'm using a 1/2 inch spacer at the bottom and a 3/4 inch spacer at the top. So I'll slide this slat forward until it's flush with this 3/4 inch spacer. Use a little glue, clamp it in place, and then pre-drill and countersink and attach the slats with 1.25" exterior screws. After you get the 2 bottom screws in, you can remove the clamps and get the 2 top screws in, and then move on to the next slat. I'll remove the spacer, put it on top of the next slat, put this in place. Again, use my spacer up top to make sure that I'm flush, and then I'll add a little glue and just continue to repeat the process. This wood just burns up the drill bit. Gotta be careful you don't break screws too. Okay, and that was the last slat. The next step is to cut the boards for the bottom. I'm using white oak simply because I had a few white oak boards in the shop. I've already squared up one end of each board. Now I'll set up a stop block and cut the boards to length. All right, well here the planters are ready for the garden. And I have to say, these things are solid. As much as I didn't enjoy building these with Jatoba, they are rock solid and I expect them to last a long time. If you're going to build it, I would definitely suggest something like Sapele. Even though Sapele is a pretty hard wood, it's easy to work with. You're less likely to break screws. I can't believe I didn't break a screw while driving these screws. I also can't believe that bit lasted throughout the entire project. That's a WL Fuller countersink bit, works really good. I think they're out of Rhode Island, made in the USA, so really good drill bits. Maybe I'll get a link to them down below. So definitely a very simple project, especially if you don't use Jatoba. After giving the planters a light sanding, I sealed them with this Danish teak sealer by Total Boat. That brings out the color of the wood, and that'll do the same thing whether you build this in Sapele or cedar or whatever other wood that's suitable for exterior use. And I will get some finish shots of this in its final place. One more thing that I am going to do, maybe I'll get some images of that to run at the end of the video, is I am going to add some kind of a nylon dome to the bottom of the feet. And what that does is it raises the wood off the ground, even if it's 1/4 inch, and that allows for air circulation, and that'll keep the water from sucking in through the bottom of the feet. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. One thing I forgot to mention is I designed the planters so a plastic insert can fit inside, and I'll have a link to that insert down in the description below.